Stephen, welcome.
Thank you, man. Pleased to be here, Yinka. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And I don't know why I've got a big smiley face, but you know what? Your smile's infectious as well. So, yeah. So welcome. Welcome.
I'm pleased, man. You got one of those faces as well, Yinka, man. Like, you've got such a friendly, warm face, man. Yeah. So.
Thank you. You know, I've had to grow into this over time.
The journey's real.
As somebody said, Yinka, you got a face for radio. It's not my line, but I'm just thinking that. But all seriousness, I think this is going to go deep today, okay? Bear with me. I'm going to be gentle with you at the same time, but I'm not going to pull any punches here, okay? I'm going to start off with your strapline here in front of me. It says, Stephen, creative champion for children in care. Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about you and your journey as an introduction.
There's the extremely long version, which obviously we don't have time for today. So I always try and give you the quicker version, I guess. So my journey began in 1985 when I was born, but there was a lot happening prior to that. My dad was actually married to my mum's sister, and he was extremely violent when he became intoxicated by alcohol, and he went to prison for attempted murder on my mum's sister. She got out of that situation quite lucky to be alive. He came back with a knife and tried to stab her, and he failed, just injured her quite badly, and then went to Winson Green Prison in Birmingham for 2 years. Came out of prison and then started a relationship with my mum. And then a year later, I was born. Quite naturally, I was seen as an abomination by everybody, you know, which I totally understand because, you know, it's not every day your sister's husband tries to kill you, goes to prison, and then comes out and gets with your sister. You know, they had 3 children together, my mum's sister and my dad, and they were married. They had 3 children. So under normal circumstances, it wasn't really necessary for me to be born. If I wasn't born, then the world would never have known any better. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't necessary. Like, I believe I was born for a reason, but under those circumstances, I understand it. And then even then, you know, when I was born, 4 months later, my mum was told that my dad had killed himself in a car. He drove into someone's house. But prior to that, my mum had spent those months experiencing horrific abuse by my dad. In and out of hospital, broken nose, broken ribs. But she was all in it by herself, you know, because of what had happened. And, you know, and she gets a knock at the door by the police to say that, you know, your partner's killed himself. So now she's in this world by herself, because even though he was abusing her, he was still meeting those needs of food, warmth, electric bills, clothes. Everything was covered because my mum was 19 years of age at the time. You know, she suffered with epilepsy, severe mental health related issues, undiagnosed, no job, no friends, no network, no money. She's got this 4-month-old baby with a dead partner, you know. And, you know, I've accessed my care records. I've read a lot of my care records, and I've heard what people have said. And it turns out that my dad was actually prostituting my mum. When I was 6 months, my mum took me into Steelhouse Lane Police Station in Birmingham, put me on the counter and said, "You can fucking keep him," and walked out. The sergeant said that Ms. Russell got into an unidentified male's car and drove off. So they tried the family assessment centres and they tried the social work approach, but my mum wasn't in any place to conform to that. And yeah, sort of 6-7 months of age, I was taken into care, Birmingham City Social Services, and I lived with a total of 10 foster families, 2 care homes, and I went to 5 different schools. So it's been an incredible journey to the 38-year-old man that I am today. You know, I've got 3 beautiful children, got 2 businesses, Elements, and my consultancy business. I've got an incredible network, got an incredible spirit, I've got an incredible mind, I've got an incredible creative mind, I've got an incredible amount of love for children in care. I found something finally in life that you don't need to pay me to do, but I'll get paid anyway. And yeah, creative champion for children in care. I'm completely right-brained, so I don't really have an ounce of logic in my being. So I always depend on my creative side, which has always served me very, very well. It's a gift that I was given. Been very creative from a child. You know, you're talking to someone that spent their entire childhood by themselves, wafting around a care system by themselves, no siblings. You know, as I say, in and out of 10 foster homes and care homes, it was always me. So I learned to become comfortable in my own space. And if you want to know the truth of it, the blueprint of the 38-year-old version of me today is that I feel comfortable still in my own space. So, yeah, that's the quick version.
Wow. I'm serious. I'm just going to say, wow. I'm pausing now as I think about how to move forward. There's so many elements and aspects of what you've said to me. You know, I'm taking a big sigh. Okay. Before you accessed your care records, when did you become aware of who you were as an individual, as a human being? And I'm asking that as a very broad question.
Yeah,
You've mentioned the fact that you're comfortable with your being alone. You've mentioned being in, you know, moving 10 different times. So when did you find you?
well, the actual answer to that question was probably when I was about 4 years of age. But I suppose the logical answer to that would be when I was 20. The reason why I say 4 was because from a young age, I had an invisible friend called John. And it was when I was around 4 years of age. I don't know where this invisible friend came from. Obviously, it was a figment of my imagination. The more spiritual people in my life tell me that it wasn't that, it was something else. But again, that's probably a conversation for another time. But yeah, it was this presence, entity, my invisible friend called John, that was always this protective sphere around me. So I had, even though that, you know, and I ain't going into the levels of abuse that I suffered in one of the care homes that I was with, one of my foster families for 2 years. From the age of 7 to 9, I suffered quite a lot of abuse, and I was taken into my first care home. But no matter what I'd experienced, Yinka, from day one to today, there's always been a sense of you're going to be okay. Like, you are just going to be okay. And it was, whether it was in a voice format or a feeling or this sort of ambience, you know. So the question, to answer the question, I knew that I was going to be all right from the age of 4. I just didn't know how I was going to be all right. I just knew that I was going to be okay. And then at the age of 19, I was severely stabbed in the back of my head at a house party. And I was essentially trying to break up a fight between 2 girls on the doorstep, but I ended up, getting stabbed in the back of my head. My cousin Tommy at the time was just slapping my face on the floor as blood was just pouring out the back of my head. And he was slapping my face, just saying, "Don't close your eyes, the ambulance is coming." And then I woke up in Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, which is ironically the same hospital that my dad was pronounced dead in 1985. And the nurse said to me, "You do realise you've been stabbed, don't you?" She was like quite, always like that mother type. You do, you'd be. I was like, "Yeah, okay." And she said, "We couldn't stitch you. We had to put glue in your head." She says, "Let me tell you something. When you come back from surgery, they were telling me if that had gone any deeper into your skull, you would be either dead or you would be brain dead." She says, "I don't know what you're up to out there, but you need to cut it out," basically. So then I came out of the hospital, and then my mentor, Dave's a different story. Dave was somebody that looked after me in the care home, and then fate would have it that we linked back up again. He was in the car park and he said, "You do know I could be seeing you in a morgue this morning." And Dave was always trying to mentor me, you know what I mean? But I was always pushing back. And it was at that point I realized that this was the crossroad of my life. So I'm 20 years of age now. I've gone back to my house in Aston because I was living next door to the Villa Ground at the time. It's quite a gang sort of central area in Birmingham. And I picked up my foster brother's utility bill. I turned it over onto the blank side, and then I just wrote down just instinctively what had to happen. Basically, it's not like you got a choice anymore, Stephen. I'm talking to myself. I'm like, you ain't got a choice anymore. Do you know what I mean? You've messed around too much now. Like, you're nearly dead. So I wrote down, move out of Aston, save money, stop smoking weed, stop drinking, start learning how to drive, and start talking to people with more respect and start having more respect for yourself. Every single one of those things was achieved by 2006. Every single one of them. And Dave said to me, and he says, do you know how you did that? And I says, yeah, because you've been supporting me. You know what I mean? You've had my back. And he went, no, it wasn't me. He says, when you wrote that down, you blue tacked it to your mirror in the lounge. So when you got up in the morning, you'd look at yourself in the mirror and you'd see reflecting back what you had to do. He said, you see, Stephen, you've never been accountable to yourself. You've always been trying to fit into someone else's box, or you've been, you know what I mean? So for the first time in your life, you was accountable to you, because it didn't matter how much I supported you and showed you, unless you were going to make that decision for yourself. And then I just realized, I guess something just flipped in me then, Yinka, really, because then I started working in care homes. And then over the next 13 years, I worked my way up. I went from support worker to senior to deputy to interim manager, got my MVQ. Then I went to be a family support worker for 2 years, got my level 3 counselling in person-centered counselling, did that for 2 years. That was a whole nother journey for me as well. And all I've done in my life is I've just gained momentum. I've just constantly gained momentum. I mean, either A, you could be talking to someone that would be dead. Well, not talking to them, but I'd be dead. You know what I mean? Like, I'd just be in a cemetery, or could have easily have gone to prison. And I guess the reason why I do what I do is because I'm very curious to find out whether I can spark something in a young person for them to realize. So I share my story with them and I tell them about my journey in the hope that they can take some inspiration from it. And that's
Okay. Already I'm smiling to myself. You already know the answer. Of course, when you share your story, you're going to spark. You're going to spark an inspiration in people. But let me just take you back. Prior to being stabbed, prior to looking to break up that fight between the two girls, that gang culture, that sense of belonging, I have a feeling, I get a sense that that was something that was happening by osmosis. You wanted to fit in somewhere. You wanted to be part of something that was that you felt at the time was bigger than the sum of who you were as an individual.
Absolutely.
But it was predicated on sand, as it were. It wasn't your authentic self.
No,
It
wasn't.
wasn't you.
That has roots in school for me.
Go on.
Because obviously I'd moved around 5 different schools. 5 of those schools, 2 of them were secondary schools. So I went to 2 different secondary schools, Castlevale and Cardinal Wiseman. And when I reflect back on the sort of 10, 11, 12, 14-year-old, 6-year-old Stephen, he was very much of a follower. He just wanted, if you told him to jump, he would say how high. If you dared him to do something, he would do it. And I guess that followed, and it, like exactly what you just said, that wasn't my natural, authentic self. It wasn't what I was meant to be doing, but it never felt natural. But I know that even when I left school and I'm sort of 16, 17, I'm still in that mindset of, well, if they're doing it, you do it. If he carries a knife on him, then you might as well carry a knife on you. Like if he's smoking weed, then you smoke weed. If he's drinking, you drinking. So you were just replicating the environment that you were in. And that's why they often say is that, you don't need to change the child. You need to change the environment, because there's nothing wrong with the child. There's nothing wrong with the young person, but there's something very wrong with where they are and what they're involved in, I guess, I suppose. Because all you had to do was take Stephen out of that circle. And then as what happened when I was 20, I started to do my own thing. But I guess kind of alluding back to what you were sort of saying is that I was very much a follower. I was very much involved with what other people were doing. And I guess, yeah, it took me 20 years to realize that I'm not a follower.
Absolutely. But at the same time, I'm thinking that being part of a gang, carrying a knife, whatever, smoking, chonging, drinking, it offered some kind of solace, some kind of comfort at that moment in time until you found what you were actually looking for.
Absolutely. I mean, we had some crazy nights, man. Like,
I can believe it. I can believe it.
We had some proper crazy nights, man. I think from the ages, because obviously in my second care home, right? So my social worker picks me up when I was 12, and it was normal for me really to just get moved. You know what I mean? So I'm coming back from school. My social worker's car's outside. I don't know why she's there. And I go in the house, and my foster mum at the time, she says, just get changed out your uniform, come down and have a quick chat with us. Came down. And my social worker's just doing the whole beating around the bush. And it's what I didn't like about it. Just tell me straight. Just tell me what's going on. And she's like, things have been really difficult for Pat. And, we've had to, yeah. So we've had to make a really tough decision, and we're gonna have to move you. And I was like, okay. And I was like, when? Like thinking it might be like a couple of weeks. She was like, now? I was like, now. She's like, yeah, like you need to go and pack your bags. I'm like, wow. So now you've got this like this 12-year-old boy that's in tears, sitting in the front of his social worker's car on a school night, driving to a care home with 8 other lads in Castle Vale. At the time was a very prominent area in Birmingham. Social worker drops me off and she does one. And I'm like,
what the hell?
Scared, man. Like, it's just...
You know what? You nailed something for me. Scared. Talk to me about that.
Fear?
Because I don't think people get it. You're moving from an environment that that you're familiar with, even though you may not trust people, at least you know what they're about. And then they're uprooting you and putting you into somewhere else. Just like that.
Just like that.
What the hell?
So in my care records, it says the reason why Stephen wasn't sort of given enough time was because they didn't know how I was going to react. So which I kind of understand a little bit of the logic, that if they'd told me we're going to move you in 2 weeks, then my foster mom at the time was probably going to have 2 weeks of hell. So in their way of thinking, they've thought, it's a bit like ripping the plaster off, isn't it? Do you pull it off slowly or do you pull it off quickly? So I understand it from that point, but it doesn't alleviate the trauma that I now feel moving to this place that is strange. And, don't get me wrong, like those lads, they took me in, you know what I'm saying? Like I wasn't really, because there was a top dog in there called Nathan.
Okay.
And Nathan, like if me and Nathan at that point were walking down, because I was very small, skinny little kid, you know what I'm saying? I weren't like a big kid or anything like that. I'm not a big guy now, do you know what I mean? I'm only like 5'7". And you would think like Nathan was my older brother. Like if people in society seen us, and I think Nathan, he kind of seen me as like his little brother type of thing. So because Nathan was the top dog in the home, nobody messed around with Nathan. You wouldn't even blink at him. Nobody messed with me. Some of the lads wanted to mess with me. There's like 8 lads in there that are like all on it.
Yeah.
They're all on it. They're either stealing cars, setting fires, smoking. They're all on it. And no one would even blink at me though, because of Nathan. The problem came was when Nathan left. But I think by that point, I'd already kind of established myself as a little kid in there. Do you know what I mean? Like I was doing my thing. But we were doing all sorts of madness. Like we were breaking into people's houses. We were smashing windows. We were setting cars on fire. We were posting fireworks through people's letterboxes. We were smoking. We were running away for a couple of days. Like we were doing madness. And I experienced that for about a year and a half. And then my link worker, Dino, said to me, "Oh, do you want to try fostering again?" I was like, "Nah, I'll get to 16 and I'll just sign myself out of care." And he says, "Okay." But I went back to him and I said to him, like, "What would it look like?" And he says, "Well, it would be a targeted, specific teenage fostering family. So like they're experienced and they'll just take you from sort of 13, 14 up to 16 and you can decide what you want to do then." I was like, "All right, let's give it a go. Let's give it a go." So they find this family. It's a Jamaican family. Out of all the families that I'd lived with, I'd never lived with a Jamaican family. So like Eunice and Neville now rock up. So Eunice, foster mum, Neville, foster dad. And I remember Neville, first time he walks in, is like 6 foot something. And he looks down at me and he goes, "You must be Stephen." And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "My name's Neville. Pleased to meet you." I was like, "All right, okay." And then Eunice comes down. She went, "So Dino tells me you don't want to go into fostering. But let me tell you something here. If you come back to our house and you don't like it, we will bring you back here. You don't have to stay." So the reason I talk like that is because of them. Like, is they literally, I got consumed with the Jamaican culture. I thought I was Jamaican. So long story short, I went to live with them. And here's the beautiful part about this, Yinka, right? So I'm 13 years of age. I've had a couple of sleepovers at this point, and I'm in the bed in the morning, and this bed was comfy. You know, I'm used to sleeping on springy mattresses in a children's home. This bed's comfy. Eunice walks into the room with a cup of tea. She opens up the curtain, beautiful day, and she says to me, "So, you know, we have to let your social worker know if you want to come live with us. We have to make a decision." She says, do you think you want to come live with us?" And I just remember saying to her, "Yeah, man." And I went back to live with them. I made her laugh. She went, "Stephen gonna be a preacher one day, you know. Stephen gonna preach. Him gonna preach." It took me out to the church. Took me out to Jamaica. So at the time I was 16 now. At this point, I've been there a couple of years, and we went out to Jamaica. Is it like 2001, 2002? 2002 went to Jamaica, and I was working in a warehouse at the time, and went to Jamaica for 3 weeks. We stopped in St. Anne's Bay. It weren't no holiday resort, you know. It was the hills. You know what I mean? It was the hills, man, right up the road from where Bob Marley was born and everything. And I just loved the accent. I felt, because I'd heard Jamaican people over here, but it wasn't until I actually went up in the hills.
It's not the same.
You know what I'm saying? So I came back to the warehouse in Aston, right? I walked in there and I was like, "Wow, go on down, right? You're all right." And he went, "Steve, what are you talking like that for?" I said, "Listen, man, if you've been where I've been, you'd be speaking like this too." I just couldn't help it, man. I just kept on talking like it. Until this day, Yinka, as a 38-year-old man with my own, I can still go back to the house and they cook food for me. And yeah, man, like we went on a beautiful, what was it? 2 years? Yeah. No, 3 years. I stayed till I was 16. And as I say, I went to live with their son in Aston. Because I was meant to go into like a training flat, but I went to live with their son. in Aston.
Okay, so automatically you've tapped into something there, because I get the sense then that there's a sense of belonging. There's a sense
Big
of
time.
love,
Yeah.
unconditional love,
I'm glad you
without
mentioned that. I'm
without
glad you
fear,
mentioned that.
without fear of any judgment, just accepting you. But at the same time, they put boundaries in place for you. They put ethics in place for you.
Yeah.
And then it's up for you then to decide, am I going to live by this code, or am I going to transgress outside of that?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the first, because obviously Neville was like bad cop, and Eunice was good cop.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Neville didn't mess around. He didn't have the time. Bless him. He didn't have the time for messing around. You know what I mean? So like, it was just one of those. Never laid a hand on me, but I feel like he beat me 1,000 times. Never laid a hand, just by his persona and the way he spoke. So this is my first time in the house. Okay. So I've walked in. Eunice says, if you don't like it, you can go. So I've sat down, I got my cap on, and Eunice has cooked some chicken and rice. And I was like, oh, this smells lovely, man. I'm used to chicken nuggets and pizza. Neville sat at the end of the table, and he puts his knife and fork down, and he looks at me and he says, you have no manners, boy. Take off your hat at the table.
Go on. Go on.
Like, what?
Is right.
Take off your hat at the table. So like, I was like, okay, let me appease him. All right. Because he don't know.
Appease him.
You don't know who's messing with here. Do you know what I mean? Like, you ain't messing with no like normal kids. Do you know what I mean? You're messing with like a rude boy coming straight out the streets. Do you know what I mean? Like, all right, I'll take my hat off. Let me appease him for a minute. And I start eating my chicken, trying to be all like, you know what I mean? Puts his knife and fork down again. He says, what's wrong with your hands, boy? I says, what do you mean? He says, why are you using your knife and fork to cut chicken? Pick up the chicken and eat it, boy. What's wrong with you? I was like, wow, this guy's serious, man. And then Eunice is at the cook and she's like, never leave him, let him eat him food. leave him. I was like, okay, all right. But what I have to tell you, Yinka, about Neville, yeah, till this day, what the biggest thing that I learned from him was consistency. Like, he wasn't like one way on a Monday and a different way on a Friday. Like, Neville was Neville.
Yes.
Wherever we went, whatever we did, he was just real. Like, this is how I am. I'm not going to confuse you. This is where the line is. And when you cross that line, I'm going to tell you what's going on. So I was dating a girl at the time when I was living there for about a year, a lovely girl called Alexis. And Eunice was really happy here because Alexis is a church girl. She knows Alexis's mom from the church. Stephen, get a pretty church girl. Yes. I was like, all right, Eunice, all right, calm down. Anyway, at the same time, I'm also hanging around a guy called Matthew, who's the local drug dealer, all right? So they don't like me hanging around with Matthew, as you can imagine. So I come back one day, and I got my hat on, and I'm high as a kite. And Neville answers the door. Where you been, boy? I says, all right, Nev, I've been chilling with Alexis. Why you feel lying for me for? I said, no, Nev, I'm not lying to you. Lift up your hat when me I talk to you. Look in my eye. So I lifted up my hat. Why your eyes so red? I says, oh, Nev, I got hay fever. Don't give me no hay fever bullshit, man. You know, see, I've been out there smoking weed with Matthew. Tell me the truth, boy. I was like, no, Nev, seriously, man. I've been with Alexis. He said, I'm going to give you one more chance to tell me the truth. And if I find out you're lying to me, I'm going to keep your backside in this house for 2 weeks. I says, all right, Nev. He says, where have you been? I says, I've been with Alexis. Now, at this point in time, he's got half of his foot in the door, so I can't see into the lounge. So then he opens the door, and Alexis is sitting in the lounge. And he didn't say a word to me. As I walked into the house, I just looked up at his 6-foot frame, and he just went, Get to your bedroom. Tell Alexis you need to go home. Embarrassed. I was embarrassed. Like, I don't think I'd ever been caught out red-handed like that. But these are little gems along the way, Yinka. Do you know what I mean? Like for the first
Absolutely.
time in my life, like you say, I was having a conditioning of discipline.
Yes.
Like these they took me out to Jamaica. We went out to this church, this derelict church. The church has got no roof on it. It's got grass growing through the floor. And Neville sat behind me on this bench, this rickety bench, and then Eunice is sat in front of me. And Neville comes over my shoulder and he says, "You see that guy over there?" I was like, "Yeah, the one with the basket." He goes, "Yeah. They call it an offering. All right. So you're gonna come round and you have to put some money in the basket. No, I ain't got my money on me at the moment. So if you put your dollars in there, I will give it to you when we come out the church." And I thought to myself, nah, I'm not putting my money in that basket. That ain't happening. And I just ignored him. So then the guy comes round and he goes, any offering? And Neville like pushed my shoulder and he says, "Put the money in there." I was like, nah, it's my money, Nev. I'm not. "Mister, put the money in the basket." And then Eunice turned her head. She went, "Stephen, you better do as him say, because him gonna kill you in here, you know. Don't make him kill you in the church. Him gonna kill you. You better put the money." I was like, "Eunice, it's my money. I'm not." And the guy says, "I'll come back in a minute. And Neville puts his head over my shoulder and he says, "You know, you just signed your death warrant, don't you?" When we come out the church, he pinned me up against the minibus that we're coming. And he went, "Don't you ever embarrass me like that again. Look, here the money. I was going to put it in your hand. And you embarrassed me in it." I was like, wow. But all of these were life lessons, man. Do you know what I mean? Like, me and Neville, we laugh about it now. Like, he calls me Gujin. You know what I mean? We have little jokes and stuff with each other. But yeah, like it's at the time, it was a baptism of fire. Like I wasn't used to any of this. But obviously on reflection, it's helped, you know what I mean? It's conditioned my mindset. So I ain't even got on to Dave. Like Dave's a different.
It's funny because that's where I was going to go on to. Now. There's so much I want to talk about and so much you've mentioned that you've peppered in the conversation thus far. And without a doubt, you're going to have to be coming back for us to talk some more and all of that. But what I'm going to ask about your mentor, I'm going to ask about, as you spoke, it felt like he was your guardian angel. You know, tell me about him.
So I went into that home completely traumatized after 2 years of significant abuse. And one of the final things that what was meant to be my forever mom said to me as a 9-year-old boy was, "The reason you're going into a children's home is because you didn't make this work." And it was almost like she heaped this pressure on this 9-year-old child that's now going to a children's home. So I've got a photo of me, 1994, sat on a children's home floor on Christmas morning with 14 other children. And I look at that photo and I see the sadness in that boy's eyes. And I think, wow, you must be wondering why you're not good enough for a family.
That's horrific. I'm sorry, I've got to say that is horrific. I can only imagine.
I can still hear her saying it to me. Essentially what had happened is I didn't call her mom. I was happy to call the dad, but my relationship with my maternal figure, or anybody that was trying to be my mom, no. Even with Eunice and Neville, like I'd call Eunice, do you know what I mean? I'd never call them mum or dad, but she didn't like it. She was like, "I'm your mum, like I'm your new mum, basically. You got to call me mum," you know, that out of respect. And I was like, "Nah, I'll call you Pat in it," like, and she weren't happy about it. And it was just 2 years of just horrible. It was mainly emotional, partly physical, and partly sexual stroke molester type of abuse. But I suffered that for 2 years. So I'm going into this home now with that 2-year trauma, and I'm now sat on that home floor on Christmas morning. And Dave was a care worker there. And yeah, I mean, I could speak all day about Dave, but he was just one of those people that all the kids gravitated to. Like all the children wanted to be around Dave. Like he was the fun one in the garden playing football, painting with you, picking conkers, drawing on leaves, just all that sort of stuff that, you know, kids used to do back in the 90s. You know what I mean? Playing marble, like all that sort of stuff, man, before this technology stuff come around. You know what I mean? You were out in the wilderness. We were going camping trips and all of that sort of stuff. Making snowmen, you know, all that sort of stuff. And, you know, I love to be around Dave. And Dave says to me, I can't remember saying this to him, but he was reading me a bedtime story at night. And he said that I said to him, will you be my dad? And he said he didn't know what to say to me at the time. And it kind of like triggered him. And he says, even in staff meetings, when people would talk about me as being selfish and greedy, like he would always try and say, look, you know, he's been through a lot, basically. That's part of his makeup. He says that to me today. So what happened is I left that home to go back to my first ever foster carer. But by the time she got me back, I'd already been tossed around, man. Do you know what I mean? Been through some stuff. And she was getting back a very angry Stephen, essentially. So then you fast forward a few years, and I'm obviously living with Eunice and Neville at this point, and I'm 16. I've left school. I've got no GCSEs. I'm going off the rail. I'm smoking weed. I'm drinking. I'm hanging around the wrong people. I'm walking down Erdington High Street. I had no business walking down Erdington High Street. I was a wanderer, Yinka. I was just walking for the sake of it, smoking my spliff and chilling. Very skinny, didn't eat much. My cap was like literally covering my eyes. And I heard a voice turn behind me and say, "Is that you, Stephen?" And I looked around and it was Dave. And I just remember the sort of shock in his face. Like he knew it was me, but he couldn't believe it was me. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? He hasn't seen this person since they were sort of like 10 years of age. And
what did he say when you turned round?
I'll tell you. I'll come to that. So we stood on that high street for about 2 hours. I think it was roughly about 2 hours. And he asked me if I'd had anything to eat, and I said, you know, just like crisps or whatever. And he said he'd just come out to the high street to get some groceries because he's cooking some food. His wife's at home. He's got his 3 boys. And you know, Dave's a man of God. Do you know what I'm saying? Dave's, you know what I mean? He's got like religious values. And he said, come back, you know, he just wanted to make sure I was fed, basically. And, you know, he fed me and we sat in the lounge. To answer your question, I did a podcast with Dave 2 years ago. Bearing in mind, Dave came back into my life when I was 16, 17, and he's been back in my life till this day. Till this day. I'm 38 years of age. Till this day. He's the godfather of my children. He has been a shining light in my life, and I've never experienced another human being on the planet that I have with him. His love is immeasurable, and he's never asked for anything from me. He's never asked for anything, nothing. It's just been pure love. And I said to him in the podcast that we did, it was my first ever podcast, and I went off script a little bit, and I said to him, like, let's be real about this. Like, I put you through a lot of stuff. Like, you're picking me up on Broad Street in Birmingham, like pissed out my face. I'm being sick in your car. You know, I'm being stabbed. You're picking me up from the hospital. You're the first person I come to when I find out that my kid's mum's about to have a baby. Like, you're essentially like the dad that I've never had, but you're also like my best friend and my brother. And I don't even know what you are. Like, you says, what made you stick in there? Like, why have you stayed here for so long? Why didn't you just, do you know what I mean? No one was paying you to be with me. All them nights coming down. I phone you. I've crashed my car. You're coming down. I got like 18 Johnny gang members from Birmingham banging off the door trying to get to someone. You come down and like you literally part them like Moses in the Red Sea. I said, Dave, if I open that door, they're going to come in, man. They've been banging off the door. He says, they're not going to touch you, Stephen. Do you know what I mean? Dave's not a big guy. Dave gets out of his car, walks through about 18 lads on bikes. Probably some of them have got knives and that. And he just walks through. He says, he's got a presence about him, Yinka. Do you know what I'm saying? He's got a presence and he sorted it out. And he told me in the podcast is on YouTube. You can go and watch the whole podcast. You just put in element support, you can watch it. And I caught Dave off guard. And I asked him the question, what made you stay? And he said, when I was a child, my mum and dad used to foster. And here's the thing now about John, right? This is where it all gets spiritually connected. He said they fostered a young man called John. And John had always said that he wanted to go and live with a rich family. He said, my mum and dad looked after him, but I did like the social stuff with him. Do you know what I mean? I went out and we went to the park to play and things like that. And John left and he went to live with this family. Me and him stayed in touch, and he came back to me and said that he's been accused of sexual assault on one of the girls that lives in the house. And he was saying, I never did it. I've never done nothing. I haven't, they were accusing me of this. I haven't done it, Dave. I haven't done it. And Dave said to me, he just remembers his face. And because he knew John, he believed him. He says, I don't believe that John would have done something like this. And a couple of days passed. And Dave said that he got news that John had found a car in a garage and turned the gas inside in the car and killed himself. And at that point, Dave, the tears on the podcast, he can't help, they just calm down. Something cracked. And he said, he says, I still hear his voice saying, I never did it. And it got to the point where he had to take his own life. And he said, Stephen, you don't understand. When I was walking down that high street and I seen you, and this comes back to your earlier question, I didn't relate you as John, but I seen something in you that was lost. You looked lost. So you have to understand, it wasn't that I wanted to be there all the time, because the amount of times you told me to fuck off and just get out your life, I could have gone. I had to be there for you because I didn't want to have another situation where I get that phone call that you've taken your own life. And we're connected. He believes as well that we're spiritually connected. That's why he came back into my life. And yeah, my invisible friend was John as a child. So that would have happened at the same time that he passed away. Again, depends on what you believe in, and people can go different ways with all of that, I guess. But there's something intrinsic about our relationship. Yeah, I believe that before I was born, Dave was supposed to come into my life. And we're still here today. He's in Egypt at the moment.
Can I ask? People may say, what does it matter? But I'm going to ask you this. You're a man of color. Your mentor, was he a man of color? Was he white?
Dave's black.
He's black?
Yeah, Dave's black. I have a lot of jokes with me and Dave. We can rip it up, man. And I always say, if you spoke on the phone, that people would think you were white. I call him King David, man, because he's got high standards. You know what I mean? He's just a man of standards, and you know what I mean. So it's Dave, man. People are gonna start rolling the red carpet out for you when you get out of the car. He's just, yeah, man. But he's a man of God, and he's always believed that God put him in my life. And I've never really been I'm not a devout Christian or anything. I mean, I don't really follow. If you was to ask me the question, do I believe in God? I would say yes. But if you was to also ask me the question, do you believe in the universe? I would say yes. I believe in a lot of different things. I'm not really the type of person that says I don't believe in things that I can't see. Yes. Some people say that, but then if I say to them, well, have you ever seen the wind that blows the trees, or have you ever seen the air that you breathe, or have you ever seen your great grandmother, or have you ever seen your heart? Have you ever seen your brain? You've never seen any of those things, and yet you and I both know they exist.
Absolutely.
You'll never see your heart, you'll never see your brain, and yet it's there. You'll never see your great grandmother, but you know that she existed at a point in time. So I understand that there are things in this world that exist that we don't see because it's true.
Thank you for sharing. I do want to move on to that crossroads in your life following the stabbing, but you've touched upon various aspects of what I would term, you've been impacted by ACEs, adverse childhood experiences.
Yeah.
And I think that's part and parcel of your understanding and your insight of children in care. And for the benefit of our listeners, maybe you can talk to me a little bit about adverse childhood experiences and the impact of that.
I always say there's only one reason as to why I do what I do, and that is because of the pain that that little boy had experienced is in me. I've tried to pull away from him. I've tried to do different things, but he always says that's not where you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be with these children that are going through what you went through, the pain, the adversity, the trauma, the anger, and all of that. It's very natural for me to be with those children, young people. If you look at any feedback that I've ever been given off a child or young person across a 17-year sort of spectrum, it's always been, he gets me, he listens, he understands me. I've never really felt like this around anyone apart from Stephen. I've been able to talk to him about, these are the things that I've always heard. And I think it's nothing special about me. It's the word that you used in the beginning. It's authenticity. It's just, so I talk about the 5 blocks of connection. And I don't want to veer off too much because I want to stick to the question that you asked, but my 5 blocks of connection are intrinsic to me, but they're also intrinsic to elements and the way that we operate with children, young people. Be present, be patient, be creative, be curious, and be authentic. You'll never perfect all of them, but if you practice them on a daily basis, the likelihood of you forming a strong connection with that child increases tenfold. You got to practice them on a daily basis.
Stephen, for the benefit again of the listeners, just mention those 5 blocks again.
Be present. Be in the moment with them. Don't talk about what they should be doing. Don't talk about what they could have been doing. Talk about how they are. Remember, a child said to me, Stephen, you're the only person that asks me, how am I in this moment? Not how was your weekend? Not are you looking forward to the holidays? How am I in this moment? The only reality that we ever have in life is the present moment. The only moment that we have right now, Yinka, is this, me and you talking.
Absolutely.
We don't have what happened yesterday, been and gone.
Absolutely.
We don't have tomorrow. Tomorrow's yet to come. We don't know what it looks like.
Absolutely.
So if we're going to give children anything, give them the beauty of your presence. Put your laptop down, put your phone down, put your agenda down, and be with that child on the curbside in the rain, if that's what's necessary. But just be present. It's a practice. Be patient and understand that it ain't happening overnight. You know, it ain't happening by next week. It ain't happening. In most cases, it ain't happening by next year. You know, you got to have an element of patience to understand. That's why I call it drip by drip, day by day. It's just a process. We do it over and over again. I don't expect you to be running before you can walk. So it's just that element of patience, creativity. It's that whole thinking outside the box stuff, isn't it? It's just, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always done.
Absolutely.
So you've got to be creative. Like, the beauty of human beings is creation. You know, whatever you believe in, the world was created, and then we create, don't we? We just create new ideas. And if you can't be creative with a child and allow them to express imagination and different thoughts in different ways. At times I brought a chessboard in and a child just said to me, I don't want to play it like that. I want to play it like this. I'm like, oh, cool. You tell me how you play the chess game. I was coming to train you how to play chess, but if you've got a different way you'd like to show me, then we'll go with that. I want to go with your agenda. If you don't want me to teach you how to play chess, I'm not going to shove that down your neck, but I want to be creative about it. Curious. We forget about the element of curiosity. I think people in my generation were taught that curiosity killed the cat, so you shouldn't be curious, but we have to be curious. We have to say to children, we've noticed certain things about you, I wonder. I'll tell you a very quick story. I had a 15-year-old, I'm going to say this quite quickly, but I'm just conscious of time. I had a 15-year-old child when I was a family support worker walk into a room. On the referral, it said referred for exam anxiety. She walked into the room. She's 15 years of age. She puts her bag down by her side. I introduced myself. Hi, my name's Stephen. I'm a family support worker. I understand you're here for exam anxiety. Doesn't say a word. I said, why don't you just start off telling me about things that you're interested in? What are your interests? What do you like to do? What do you get up to? Didn't say a word. I said, you know, sometimes it can be really difficult to talk, you know. Do you like drawing? Do you like music? Didn't say a word. And at that point, I felt lost. I thought, I've never been faced with a child. I thought, are you a mute? Like, do you talk? Like, what's going on? Then in my head, something came in my head and said, just tell her what you see. Just tell her what you see. So then I said to her, I've noticed since you walked into the room, your knee's been shaking and you've been biting your nails. And then she stopped biting her nails. She just looked at me as if like, and I thought, I've got you. I've got you. I said, I don't know if I'm right. I could be totally wrong. But I have a feeling that you've got something to talk about, but you don't know how to talk about it. And she looked at me straight in the face, Yinka, and she said, can I go now? I said, do you mean back to your class? She went, yeah. And she picked up a bag and she walked out. And I sat there thinking to myself, have I said something wrong? The teacher walks in and says, how was the session with G? I said, I think it was, she didn't say much. She said, oh, she's not a big talker. She'll open up eventually. Typical answer from a teacher. This girl walks in a week later, different vibe, different energy. She sits down and she goes, you know, last week when you said, oh my God, she talks. Okay. Yeah. You know, when you told me last week I was holding on to something, I didn't know how to talk about it. She says, I have, but I don't know how to talk about it. So I said, that's cool. There's a piece of paper and pen. You want to try writing it? She tried, but her hand was shaking. So I said, just take your time. I could see she was nervous. She says, I'll just tell you. She says, when I was 10 years of age, my mum used to take me over to my nan's house because my mum would work nights. And my nan's best friend's son used to go there as well. He was 16 at the time. And one of the days he asked me if I wanted to play a board game upstairs. And I didn't think nothing of it. I just went upstairs with him. But I noticed that he locked the door behind him. And then he raped me. He told me not to say nothing because I'd get into trouble. He'd get into trouble. He raped me another 2 times after that. This is a 15-year-old girl telling me what had happened to her at the age of 10. This is a 15-year-old girl that hasn't told a single person on the planet until she told me, somebody that she'd only met last week and didn't say a word to. I said to her, I'm curious. Last week when you came in, you didn't say nothing to me, and yet you've told me something very significant to you, what had happened to you. I'm curious as to why now. I said, does anybody else know? She says, nobody else knows about it. You're the first person I've told. I said, I'm curious to find out why me. Why have you? She says, when I left last week, I couldn't stop thinking about what you said to me. I said, what did I say to you? You noticed that my knee was shaking and I was biting my nails. I only started to do that after it happened to me. I couldn't tell my mum because I didn't want my nan to get into trouble. And I couldn't tell my nan because I didn't want my mum to get into trouble or my dad to find out. And he told me not to say nothing because we get into trouble. So I kept it to myself. Yinka, this is a 15-year-old girl that spent the past 5 years researching what would happen in a rape crisis. She'd researched the whole thing. She knew what would happen in court. And yet, because I'd noticed something so innocuous, she came back and told me. And I have to, I've got the card here. She come in on a week, because it was 6 weeks. She come in on week 6. And she bought this card.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see that, but
thank you.
Yeah. She bought this card in. And it says, thank you so much for everything you've done. Thank you for listening to me every week. I'll miss you pointing out my body language and telling me what it means. I really appreciate everything you've said and done. And I'm really going to miss our sessions. You've made me feel comfortable. I've been able to talk to you about anything. I miss all your jokes and stories. They made me laugh. Thank you for the new things you've taught me. I've enjoyed every session. P.S. Sorry I got you a pink girly card. It was the only one left in the shop, which I thought was pretty hilarious to go on the end of it. But I know I went off a little bit, but I really wanted to share that.
You
of
didn't.
the importance, curiosity. You don't have to know the answer with curiosity, but if something doesn't feel right, it usually isn't.
Absolutely. Trust
you just mention it. You know, you just say, look, I've noticed when you sit down, sometimes you pull your hair, and I've noticed sometimes your hair comes out into your hand. I've noticed that you tie your right shoe up, but not your left. I've noticed that on a Monday morning, you run into school, but on a Tuesday, you walk in. I don't know. You've noticed so many different things. I had a message here. I want to share this very quickly because I think it's important on Instagram, because people contact. I'm always inundated with messages. Have a listen to this. Morning, Stephen. I attended your seminar a few months back when I first started my journey as a support worker in a residential home. I was totally new to the job at the time. This weekend, I was in the car with our new girl, And I noticed every time we stopped at a roundabout, she grabbed the passenger's seat in front of her. I asked her if you're okay. And I'd said to her that I'd noticed that she was grabbing the seat. And she opened up about having previously had a near miss car accident near the roundabout. And she said that I was the first person that noticed it. I asked her if there was anything I could do to help her on those journeys. And she said listening to music on her AirPods helps. It could help her zone out. I guess I just wanted to say thank you. Your words stuck in my head about when you notice something and mention it. We have since calmed her journeys, and she really appreciated me noticing and saying something. That is the power of not only sharing stories, but the wisdom, but the power of curiosity. That for so many innocuous things, no adults in these children's lives, they pick up on these things. They just go through their childhood and no one notices. The adults are so fixated on the big stuff,
Absolutely.
the significant traumas. They just miss out on the small stuff.
And what you've demonstrated with those two examples was you saw them. You saw them. You saw them. And that's healing in of itself, to be noticed. And I can't match anything that you've said to me today, but digressing but related, even with the homeless community, and I see people who are asking for money. Even if I don't give them money, what they will say time and again is, just acknowledge me. Just acknowledge me. You don't have to give me money, but just acknowledge my existence. That doesn't cost anything.
No.
It doesn't cost anything. And I think, I personally think life is simple, but it's human beings that make it so complicated, unnecessarily so. You've reached 20. You know what? For me, this podcast feels like a podcast in 3 parts, you know. Seriously, I'm serious. You're laughing, I'm being serious now. But you've reached 20. You've blue-tacked your blueprints. How does it feel to step away from the gangs? How does it feel to take those stabilizers off, to realize that, you know, I don't need these people around me? How does it feel to shine your own spotlight on you and walk your walk?
I'm telling you, man, I wouldn't want to be anybody else in the world apart from me.
Oh, bless.
You could give me the opportunity to become a professional footballer and go back to being 20 tomorrow morning and earn 200 grand a week and all this. And not all footballers, but sometimes I think you lot are lacking some personality, man. You got these big books, but you trained what to say on the camera. And I just think, what does your life actually look like? And I would not risk. And it's sometimes people say to me, you know, would you go back in time and have that sort of therapeutic upbringing, one home, they look after you? And not a chance.
Why not?
Because I just wouldn't be who I am today. I would not risk moving one of those. You know, you've seen the movie Inception, where if you just,
you know what, you're the second person.
piece.
You're the second person, and in a week has told me to watch that, and I don't know why I've not watched it, but
it's a good movie.
I'll get onto that.
Yeah, you know, if one domino piece was moved and it knocks that, and it creates a whole different chain of events, then doesn't it?
Butterfly effect. Yeah.
The fact that I am where I am today, with the mindset that I've got, in good health, and just, do you know what I mean? And yeah, what I've gone through compared, you know, and I think I pinch myself, I'm like, geez, man, you realize where you're coming from, don't you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, the fact you were even born was a complete, like, your mum's sister was married to your dad. Like, the only reason you were born, mate, let's get this right, is because your dad was a toxic relationship. He was a domestic abuser. He went to prison for attempted murder, came out and got with your mum and had you. And even under them circumstances, because let's face it, my dad was prostituting my mum at the time. That's basically what was happening. He could have forced her to have an abortion. He could have been like, listen, you weren't having no baby, you know. He could have punched her up with me in her belly. He could have done whatever he wanted to. It wasn't necessary for me. And even under them circumstances, I was born. So now I'm born. Dad dies. I mean, you talk about karma. Dad dies. I get taken into care at 6 months. I move around 10 foster homes, 2 care homes, 5 schools. I have significant abuse for 2 years. I get moved to a care home. I get stabbed at 19. I got low self-esteem. I got no confidence. I've left school with no GCSEs. I can't keep friends because I keep breaking friends. I'm addicted to cannabis. There was too much stacked against me to not be sat here talking to you today. And yet here I am. So if you want the actual reason of why I do what I do with young people, it's got nothing to do with status. It's got nothing to do with money. It's got nothing to do with business. It's got everything to do with purpose. And that's what I call pain to purpose. Pain to purpose, man. It's my purpose. It's not what I was made to do. It's what I was born to do. It's not like I got a choice in it, really. It's just like, you got to do what's natural. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's natural, then just do it. Like, if you don't have to try, do you know what I mean? Like, you don't need to send me to university for 5 years to study child psychology. Like, I can do it. Don't get me wrong. I can do it. And hats off to anybody that's done it. Fair play. But I don't need to do that. It's just too intrinsic with me. Like, there ain't a PhD on the planet that can sit me down with Dylan on a curbside on a Sunday night when it's raining to be like, bro, I get it. PhDs don't do that. No. PhDs, they teach you theory, which you need. It's great, but
lived experience is what we're talking about here.
Yeah, man. Authenticity. Can you relate?
Absolutely.
Liberated is how I feel. If you're asking how I feel liberated. But I seen a beautiful quotation, you know, Yinka, and it was a garlic clove with a piece of orange in there. And what it said underneath was, just because you can fit in doesn't mean you belong.
Absolutely.
And I realized that I was just trying to fit in with a lot of these people, but I didn't belong there.
Absolutely.
It just took me time to realize that I didn't belong there.
And that must have been a scary transition, though, at the same time, acknowledging within yourself, wow, I don't belong here. But then you have to go into the wilderness alone to find you.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that can be really, really scary for people to do that.
100%. And this is one thing that I wanted to touch on as well with this podcast, is that what I've come to realize is sometimes people ask the question, how is it, on one hand, you've got a child that's had a nurturing upbringing, mum and dad have been stable, beautiful family, beautiful upbringing, few ups and downs, few bumps, but you know that they become an adult and you speak to the 25-year-old and they're like, how's it going? Yeah, I'm pretty cool. Do you know what I mean? I'm quite secure. And then how is it that maybe a few years later, there's a knock on the door to say that person's killed themselves? Because no one's seen it coming. There was no
sign, but the signs were always there, though.
They were always there, but no one see. No, you know, the Facebook was on holiday, loving life, yes, girlfriend,
all of that.
And this is why I wanted to bring this to this podcast, because I think, you know, when we think about suicide, it's very relevant, isn't it? And it's an apt time as well, because it's, you know, Movember and that. And then on the other side of it, you've got somebody like myself that's gone through the trauma, gone through the pain, tossed around a care system. If I had been that guy, people might have been like, okay, we kind of get it. We get it. You know what I mean? We get it. He was under immense pressure. So then some people ask me, what do you think the difference is between somebody that's had that nurturing upbringing, but yet and suicide is just an example. It might just be that they grow up and they go to prison or whatever that might be, but no one consider why that happened to them. And yet someone like me can do that. And what I often say is there are factors that you have to take into account that are happening before birth. There's already stuff happening before that child's even born. Like right now, there is a mother and a father somewhere in the world that in 10 years from now, they're going to have a 10-year-old child that's in care, and they don't even know it right now. They don't even realize it because something's going to snap. Some of it might be what I'd just say genetics. We understand that there's DNA and there's genetics that play a part, that what dad passes down to the child or what mum passes down to the child, whether that's ADHD or whatever that might be. There's certain things that you're just born with. But I think of it on like a deeper level as well. Like I go a lot deeper than that. And I think to myself, there's just certain codes that we're all born with, a unique code. And you might call it luck, or you might call it being blessed, but there's a certain code that's imprinted into a child that no matter what they experience, they're going to end up in a certain place because it's just a code that they've got. You can go onto a spiritual level. I like to call it a code, like a fingerprint. It's just unique to that individual. I know children that, well, I've worked with children that have gone through the most horrific, like much worse than me. I've worked with children that have had to eat dog food. They've had to sleep in their feces. I've seen some nasty cases over the 17 years. And yet, if you was in a room with that child, yeah, of course, there's some sort of behavioral things there, but you scratch your head a little bit and you think, wow, have they actually experienced that? Because on the surface, there's a lot underneath there, but on the surface, they don't appear to fit that narrative. They just seem what some people say as normalized. Like they don't, I'd never know if you hadn't have told me. And when I speak to people about my story, people say to me, Yinka, I would never have thought you'd have gone through all that. You seem like such a well-rounded individual. I was even going to ask you like what university you went to because you're so well-spoken, and they make these assumptions.
Absolutely.
So yeah, for me, I just think, yes, environment has a massive part. Influence has a massive part. In person-centered counseling, we learned about the self-concept and the organismic self. The self-concept is essentially who you were made to be, who you were influenced by, your parents mainly. And then I believe in the organismic self is just who you were born to be. I don't know where you was born, Yinka, but let's imagine that Yinka was born in Japan. Let's say when you was a baby, they picked you up as a baby, they put you on a plane and you went out to Japan to live with a foster family. And as you grew up, you spoke Japanese, you ate Japanese, everything about Yinka was Japanese. You might not look Japanese, but everything about you is Japanese. You are a part of the Japanese culture. I'd say your spirit would still be the same as you are today. Your core, who you are, who you were born to be.
The essence.
The essence of Yinka wouldn't matter where he goes in the world. It's the exterior, isn't it, that gets changed, the language, the culture, the influence, all of that stuff. But I like to bring it back to just like who you were born to be, essentially. And I think with my situation, I was just born like I was never really destined to go like complete, I don't know, to prison or to cemetery and things like that. It was always
you weren't destined to be a gangbanger or anything like that, because when you found your authentic self, you found you, as you said before, you found your purpose, your sense of purpose. And it was like pushing against an open door. It was effortless. And you can rest at night. You can sleep easy. You can sleep easy.
That's exactly it, man. And, I've got my kids as well. Father of 3 children. My oldest is 14 now. Malachi's 14, Corey's 13, Alyssa's 11. And yeah, like just being with my kids and just thinking like, wow, the fact that I was born, and look at my kids and think, wow, the fact that you was born. And yeah, it's an incredible journey, but one that I'm extremely grateful for. And I practice every day trying to be humble about it. And I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, and it's just intrinsic to me.
When you look at your children and then you compare and contrast your upbringing, your life, to theirs, what do you think? What do you see? What do you feel?
I have I'm what you well, I'm unorthodox in terms of like, I tell my sons particularly like when they need to appreciate things and to be grateful for things. And I understand that sometimes I have to apologize to them because it's like maybe that come across as a little bit like, do you know what I mean? Like if we're in the shop or something, they're like, "Oh, Dad, can we have that game?" I'm like, just because you see me with money doesn't mean I can afford it. Do you know what I mean? Like
Absolutely, absolutely.
you're gonna have to wait for that, or you're gonna have to earn it. Like you can do some work around the house or something and earn it. And in there, but sometimes I've been quite strong with that message. And I guess I'm trying to appreciate that my childhood isn't their childhood. And they haven't been.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's about striking that balance as well. I've got, other friends, etc., who weren't necessarily born in the UK, who were born um, across the African diaspora, the African continent, or were born in Asia, and things like they've had children now, and they see that they've done successful in their careers, etc., and their children get the benefits, the fruits of their hard work,
Yeah,
but they know that they've had to do without when they were their children's age.
absolutely.
And in some ways, one or two of them have said, I'm kind of envious of my children because they've never experienced the hardship that I've experienced.
Yeah, I'd fit
But
that
you're,
model.
but you're
Yeah,
spot on. Why should they have to experience what you've experienced to be
absolutely.
appreciative of life itself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's something that I've constantly reminded myself over and over again as a parent is that they're not you, Stephen. Stop talking to them as if you're talking to like your little self. Do you know what I mean? Like they're their own beings.
Absolutely.
They're in a completely different era. They've had a completely different upbringing. So
That
just
you've that
concentrate
you've
on
helped to shape and
absolutely.
create as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I've never really been a fan of like bubble wrapping them either. And just, obviously I'll protect them from harm. Like I'll never want them to suffer any harm or anything like that. But, it's that stereotypical, if they're walking on a wall, like I'm not really the parent to pull them off and say, "Oh, you could fall." It's like, if you fall, you
Yeah,
fall. That's,
it's lesson learned.
do you know what I'm saying? Or, if they're in the kitchen when they were younger and like the cooker's on, I wasn't the parent to say, don't go by the cooker because it's hot. It's like, no, if they touch it, they're not going to keep their hand on it. They're going to go, oh, that's
Yeah,
hot. And then, do
lesson
you know what I
learned.
mean? Like, I understand that it sounds a little bit counterproductive, but children need to experience a level of pain to understand that when they get into adulthood, it's not sunshine and roses. Like you're going to
Well,
go through stuff as an
well,
adult.
it's interesting. It's interesting because I generally talk to peers, colleagues, friends, and that. And back in the day, when school was out for us, we'd go to the seaside, which say Southport, about what 15, 20 miles away. We'd get our
Mhm.
sandwiches, we'd get our bottle of pop, there'd be a gang of us, and
Mm.
9 o'clock in the morning, we'd make our way there, and we wouldn't be seen until 6, 7, 8 o'clock
Yeah.
at night. That was
Yeah.
it. But little Johnny goes missing for 10 minutes now. The
Yeah.
police are getting called. There's all
Yeah.
reporting this, that, and the other. And I think
Yeah.
we've created a society whereby we've made the younger generation
Yeah.
risk averse.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I seen actually, there's like a little like cartoon thing. It had like this sort of line going. It says on one half of it, you had the 1993 parent kicking the child out of the house saying, "Don't come back till the lights come on."
Yeah.
And then you've got, I think it was like the 2015 at the time, the 2015 parent saying, "Don't go out the house, get upstairs on your PlayStation."
I know. And it's
Keeping
like,
the child in the house, so
and
it's
and and what we're missing out on, what the younger generation are missing out on with technology, etc., is they're being force fed
oh
a perception via social media of how life is, but
yeah,
it's a falsehood.
yeah. And it's information overload as well. I mean, you know, to watch my daughter flick through about 82 TikTok videos in the space of about 5 minutes.
Gosh,
it's like, Jesus, man. Like your brain has just tried to process it. It hasn't even processed it. It's just, I don't know what your brain. I do worry a lot, to be honest, about the next generation of parents. You know, the sort of average, I don't know, 15-year-old today, that in say 10 years from now they will have a child, and how they will believe the right way is to bring that child up. And I've seen something of, you know, they're not going to have like the baby in the arm, they're going to have the mobile phone. It's like, I'm going to take care of my phone before I actually take care of the baby. You know, has the phone been fed? Has the phone been charged? And it's like, no, has your baby been fed? Has your baby been put to sleep? You know what I mean?
You know that I see that countless times whereby the children, maybe a mum, I'll say a mum, is pushing one child in a buggy. There's two slightly older children going to primary school, but she's on the phone. And the attention is on the phone and not on the children as they're walking in there. And I'm not being stereotypical, but I do see that happening all the time.
A lot. And it comes back to the block that I spoke about of being present. Like, there's a time for you to be on your phone. Absolutely. Everybody's on the phone. There's a time for you to be on your laptop. There's a time for you to watch TV. But I think when you've got an actual moment, particularly for something like walking to school, you know, that's quite an intimate moment, that is, isn't it? Or the drive on the way to school, or the drive on the... There's just certain moments with children where it's not necessary to do that. You know, you can put that down. And we've all been guilty of it. I've been guilty of it as well. But boy, do I kick myself after thinking that was a time to be present. You know, that was a time to...
Missed opportunity.
Absolutely. 100%. And it's about being conscious of it, isn't it? It's not about being perfect, because none of us are perfect, but it's just about being consciously aware that actually 10 minutes ago, it would have only taken you 5 minutes just to have been with them, just to, you know, how was your day? What's been going on? You know, did you speak to your teacher earlier about what, you know, just trying to, I don't know, practice the presence, I guess.
Absolutely. I just want to touch on a bit of your campaign in terms of children in care. I think you wrote something very recently about is it 2026, 100,000 children will be in care.
Yeah, the care system's pretty much ready to burst its banks. Well, if it hasn't already burst its bank. I think it's a DFE that estimates by sort of 25, 26, there'll be 100,000. There's 82,000, I believe, at the moment across the UK that are currently in care, which if you do the numbers, you could just about fit them into Wembley Stadium. I believe Wembley's got a capacity of, is it 88,000 or 90,000 capacity?
Yeah.
They've increased the capacity at Wembley, haven't they?
Yeah.
So I always use that as an analogy to think, right, you can pretty much fit every single child in care into Wembley Stadium and have some seats left. Boy, would I love to be in that stadium. Do you know what I mean? To have the 86,000 children in care, every single one of them across the country. And that's just, give me 10 minutes. Give me 10 minutes and we're done. The scary part about that is in the next, 3 to 5 years, they're going to be lining up around the stadium, because there's going to be no room in there, because it's going to go over capacity. That's the scary part for me. And the other part that's counterbalanced with that is, by I think 2026 as well, or 2027, there's going to be a shortage of 25,000 foster carers as well. And if you look at that, there's an increase of children in care, and the only route that funnels everything into is residential care,
which scares the hell out of me.
Is all really privatized now. I mean, you don't really have many council-run homes anymore.
No.
They're all privatized. Now, I'm not saying all of them are in it for the profits and they're all in it, but I've been around the circuit for years.
Let's come on. You only have to do the maths.
Yeah.
You only have to do the maths.
it is a money making machine for some of these homes. I know of many homes that are absolutely in it for the right reasons, got massive values, 100% love, compassion for the children. I've spent time with these homes, I've spent time with these staff, I've spent time with these people. But yeah, let's not make no sort of bones about it. There are homes out there that they know that generates a profit. Someone said to me once, actually, what you should do is just make them all become CIC companies and see whether they go for it. Most of them won't. Because then they have to actually account for
reinvest every surplus. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think
like wouldn't you just say, we're not going to be a limited company, we're going to be a community interest company, and we're going to account for every penny?
Absolutely. I think for me, looking at your history as well, you were fortunate as a man of color. You were fortunate to get that foster care support, as it were, because disproportionately the amount of children of color who are left within the care system, it's stark. And then as a society, what are we generating? What are we doling out? We're doling out black children, brown children who believe in the stereotype that I'm unlovable, I can't be cared for, I'm not. Why would anybody?
Minority. They are minorities, and you're exactly right, because when I was looking around in the system, there weren't many people that looked like me. I was told as a child, it would have been easier if I was in one family, because they would have just told me I was half caste, I guess. But because I'd lived with multiple families and multiple homes and multiple schools, I had multiple terminologies that I had to get used to. So obviously the big one was half caste. Then came in mixed race, and then came in dual heritage and biracial and mixed parentage, and derogatory ones like breed, and so I just had this breed, half breed, crossbreed, yeah, all of those. But the biggest one that really got me was when I asked a member of the staff in one of the care homes, in my second care home, like, so what would you see me as, like? And he said, oh no, you're not half caste, you're half black. And I says, well, does that mean I can be half white? And she said, no, you can't be. But she looked really puzzled. She's like, actually, can he be half black but not half white? But what does that make any sense? Like, how can somebody be half black but they can't be half white? And it's not like I was aspiring to be any of those things. I was just trying to find out, why can I be one but not the other? And
trying to find identity as well.
Absolutely. So now, if you ask me, I don't subscribe to race, to be quite honest with you. I don't believe in it. I don't subscribe to it. I don't think it's natural. I think at some point in time, someone had a great idea to separate people into races. At the end of the day, you've got Man U fans and you've got Chelsea fans. They're all human beings and they love football. That's the basis of it, isn't it? We can get into, ref, that was a penalty. No, it wasn't a penalty. At the end of the day, if it was your team, you'd be claiming for the penalty as well. So it's just one of those things, isn't it? So you've got people walking around with Man United tops on. You've got people walking around with what they perceive as white skin. You've got people who support Chelsea. You've got people who, at the end of the day, we all love football, and we should use that narrative as we all love each other as human beings. I just don't subscribe to the guy being in the middle, because I was told as a child that I should think myself lucky because I'm getting the best of both worlds. Well, you get the best of both worlds, don't you? You're like, you can be black and you can be white. I'm like, says who? Says you. Like, who made up that rule? Who made up the rule that there's two worlds? There's a black world and there's a white world, and I get to go on my little rocket ship and go to both of them as and when I choose to. I don't believe in that. I was conditioned to believe in that, but I have my own mind. I don't subscribe to race. I don't believe I'm black. I don't believe I'm white. I don't believe I'm half, mixed, breed, I don't believe in any of that stuff. BAME is the new one. Black, Asian.
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to it, Yinka. As far I'm not on this earth to subscribe to a race that man has created. I am a human being living out my human experience. You can believe whatever. If I had a room of 100 people and I asked them what they think I was, you'd get multiple different answers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you was in that room, I'd say 99% of the people would say you were black. If 99% of the people would say Tim was white. And yet, if I was in the same room, they would come up with different. I think he's mixed race. No, he's not. He's dual heritage. No, he's not. He's biracial. No, I think he's half. And this is what I was saying at school. I had a best mate called Adam, a best mate called Junior, right? Junior was perceived as black. Adam was perceived as white. Both my best mates. I was like, how come I have to be all these different names, right? Adam's white. Okay, that's just it. He's not mixed white. He's not dark white. He's not light white. All right. Junior isn't dark black. He isn't mixed black. And he isn't light black. He's just black. So why do I have to be all of these different? And it was only me that really understood it. And do you know what the sad part about this is why I felt so lonely. Even people that look like me, they would regard themselves as black. I'll be like, oh, what do you see? So the majority of people, when I was growing up, that looked like me, they would say they were black. And I'd be like, well, are both of your parents black? No, my mum's white and my dad's black. So how are you more black? Well, because my dad's black. All right. So if your mum was black and your dad was white, would you be more white? No. I'd still be. People just don't. It's just so confusing. I just haven't got it. But yeah, even till this day, my friends that look like me, they still regard themselves as being black. I think usually it's because of the shade, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the shade of brown. And this is what I try to explain to people, and particularly to my own children, is that there's no such thing as white and black. Human beings on a color spectrum are on a spectrum of brown. And the human being goes from the darkest brown to the lightest brown. And the best person to match that is probably Michael Jackson, because he's been through all of the shades. He's been through everyone, hasn't he? You know, he started off looking like Wesley Snipes and ended up looking like Vinga Rice. So yeah, it's a spectrum, and I fit on that spectrum. You do, but absolutely. Yeah, there we go. Conversation for another time, I reckon.
I think so, Stephen. We're going to wrap this up soon, but I'm going to ask you the question.
Yes.
What next for you? What does 2024? What is that? What's on the horizon for you?
It's a really good question, because I've been thinking a lot about it, but I still haven't come to much of a conclusion, to be honest. I've been this journey that I've been on with Elements, and you probably wouldn't believe, but we haven't received a penny funding. We've been paid for by schools and homes and virtual schools and everything like that. We are a CIC company, so we are trying to set up. So the vision for Elements in 2024 is to become, we are already registered, but we want to actually get funding and properly drive this forward now and get out there to as many children and start to have a proper team in place. But I've always just been pinching myself along the way. I didn't even really tell you about how Elements started. Like the fact that I just rocked up into a post office one day with these letters and ideas, and I sent them out to 98 schools, and one school got back to me to say no thank you, basically. And the hardship that I had to really go through to get it off the ground, to 5 years later to be here heading into 2024 with 2 businesses affiliated with quite a few virtual schools, fostering agencies, and I've been rolling with the punches, man. I've been just rolling with the punches and just seeing where it takes me. But to give you a more definitive answer in terms of the vision that I'd have for 2024, it would definitely for Elements to be fully funded, so we can start to roll our programs out a little bit more fluidly across the country or wherever we need to be. I really want to advance a bit more in my speaking career as well.
Absolutely.
I was never really one to jump on a stage in the beginning, but I kind of love it now. Actually, it fills me up, man, to be able to go and inspire and just really. I always talk about the 4 I's. When I get on a stage, I say, right, I'm here to inspire, influence, impact, and inform. If I can do that, then I've done what I've come here to do. Yeah, I guess continue to nurture the relationships with my children. They're first and foremost. I suppose continue to remind the people in my life that I love them very dearly and that I just wouldn't be here without them. Dave included in that. And yeah, I suppose I like the element of surprise as well. I just like the element of one day opening up my email and then just having that email that says, you know, we want to work with you. We want to bring you in. And it's like, wow, really? And I'm like, I play it humble. I'll be like, okay, yeah, no problem. I'm like, yes, come on. Yeah, man. So yeah, I don't need to know really what 2024 holds. I'm happy to just walk. So yeah.
Cool.
Sorry, that was a very, very long way.
No, not at all. And I know for a fact we're going to be asking you back in. I know that for a fact.
I've got you on LinkedIn now as well, so.
Good, yeah, I accept it. Don't worry about that. Don't worry, I accept it.
So, yeah.
You've kind of answered this question, I believe, but I'm going to ask you now. Who's the most important person in your life?
Well, people will be my children. From a selfish perspective, I am.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to stop you.
Yeah.
It's not selfish.
Mm.
It's not selfish. The most important person in your life is you.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
You're the expert of you. You know what makes yourself happy. You know what makes yourself sad.
Yeah, I suppose I say I know that. I know that. I think I say selfish, and it's more of a robotic response, isn't it? It's like, you know, it's selfish to think of yourself. And I do a lot of work with teachers and stuff around filling up their own cups first. And I always use the you know, the lion analogy that, you know, it's the female lion that eats before the cubs. You know, the male lion eats before the female. She brings back the food because he has to protect the pride. He needs his strength the most. The female lion eats second because she's got to catch the food. And then it's the cubs that eat last, because if mom and dad aren't right, the cubs die. And you know, you're on the plane, who puts their mask on first? It's the parent. So, you know, you see a parent riding down with their child on a bike. Is the child in front or behind? No, the child is in front. So the parent can see what's coming. You know, it's not to say if the child gets hit by the car first, like, no, actually the parent can see what the child sees. So they can say, stop at these lights, you know, that type of stuff. So you're absolutely spot on. We are number one, because if we don't work, nothing works. And if you haven't got it for yourself, then you can't have it for other people, can you? So
you can't pass it.
Yeah.
Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Seriously,
it's been a ride, hasn't it? I'm just looking at the clock at the moment. 1 hour 35. It feels like we've been here half a day.
You know what? We've got loads more stuff to talk about.
Oh, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
I do feel selfish in the fact I know you've been the host, but you know, I'd love to learn a bit more about yourself as well. And
listen, this is about you. Don't worry about that. This is about you. You have a story to tell. You have a story to tell. And if I can use this platform as one vehicle for your story, then so be it, because it must be told. And as you said right at the beginning, it's about inspiring others.
Absolutely.
To give them hope. We do what we do because we want to inspire others. We want the injustices of the world to be corrected, the wrongs to be righted. And you're doing that. You're a proper testament to that in terms of what you're doing, and long may that continue.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Appreciate it, man. I appreciate being here. I appreciate the opportunity. And you've been a fantastic host as well. So it's just been an absolute pleasure to be here with you.
I'm humbled. Yeah, you had me when I said wow right at the beginning. Seriously, you had me down. There's so much.